Have you ever had the experience of having your fears whipped up? You know, like you have with an electric whisk when it goes into a bowl of liquid and the liquid is still, and you put the whiskey in and you turn it on and vroom, ramp it up a few levels, and all of a sudden the mixture is just whipping around at a rate of knots, and air is going into it and it's changing and it's ferocious and it feels all over the place. Our fears can feel like that sometimes. At the moment, with COVID all around, it could be anything. Fears of, will I lose my job, coupled with fears of, will I get COVID when I go out and I've got an underlying health condition, coupled with, will my children be okay when they go back to school, if they go back to school? Is it safe? Coupled with, are my parents going to be all right? Is my family members going to be safe? There's so much unknown. Will our country ever restore itself? That we can be really afraid, and with social media and slightly sensational headlines that we might read, everything can just get whipped up. Well, if you're feeling like that, or you have been feeling like that, then don't worry, because loads of us are. And furthermore, don't worry, because I'd love to share with you something that God wants you to know about your fears. The first thing, before anything else, is to say that being afraid in itself is not a sin. It's a normal and natural response to when something is, well, scary. You know, I go into war, I'm naturally afraid of dying. I go into hospital where COVID is, I'm naturally afraid of catching it. I walk by a main road with my child next to it, I'm naturally afraid of that child walking into the road. Fear is really natural. What God is much more bothered about than whether we get afraid or not is how we respond when we're afraid. And he wants us to call out to him, turn to him and cry out to him for help. That's what he's most bothered about. That's what we were made to do, he would say, to call out to him and ask for everything we need. We always call out or lean on or go to something when we're afraid. Whether we're afraid of medically becoming ill, we look at the data of how many people might die or whatever from COVID. Whether we're afraid of our children not being safe, we look at the statistics for that, or we go to experts who might say no, it is safe or it isn't safe. We always go somewhere where we're afraid to reassure ourselves. And God says that when we're afraid, the first place he wants us to go to is to him. Call out to me when you're afraid, God says. He promises to give you strength to keep going. He promises to comfort you in your fear. He promises to give you everything you need. And he promises to protect you from the evil one, from evil getting you, essentially. But what may surprise you more than anything is that what God doesn't promise when he asks us to call out to him. He doesn't promise that we'll be safe. And I reckon that's the number one confusing thing, and the thing that puts most people off calling out to him is we want safety. We want to be okay, but God doesn't promise that yet. But let's bear in mind that nothing else we'll call out to will promise that. Not really. Statistics are never any good if you're in that 1% who might die. Rules and regulations are never always foolproof. And no matter what precautions you might put in place, you can never be sure that they'll actually protect you. So let's not pretend that other stuff will keep us safe completely either. And that's why we should still cry out to God, because he is the one that promises us so much, even though he doesn't promise to keep us safe. He promises to give us everything we need, just like he gives the birds the food and he clothes the flowers. He promises to give us what we need if we run after him. He promises his strength in us if we come to him and give our lives to him. He promises comfort in our times of need as we walk through this life, this unsafe life. And he promises that one day we will never be afraid again when we walk through to the new world that he's prepared for his people. So if you're afraid, what God is really bothered about is where you go with your fear, not whether you get afraid or not. And he really wants you to cry out to him, because only he can give you strength and comfort and hope of a new world. And only he can give you everything you need to walk through this life. Don't go anywhere else. That will only lead to your fears being whipped up more. Instead, go to the one who made you to call out to him, and promises in Jesus Christ to give you everything that you need.